Hello everyone. In this video, I thought I would talk about uh, an important objection to philosophy as a discipline. So, I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of philosophers and a lot of non-philosophers, but clever people, alert people, and they've my thesis, my work, my interest area is authenticity, existential authenticity, coming from the work of Jean-Paul Sartre and or Sartre, and Heidegger, Kierkegaard, all the existentialists. That's my particular philosophical pet peeve. And more about the theory of authenticity and why it's important later. And one of the objections to that theory, one of the theory stipulates essentially that one ought to strive for authenticity and move away from what Sartre called bad faith. The theory says very little about why it's necessarily why inauthenticity is bad. Like, one of the points made by existential philosophers, by Sartre, is that, and this is a point made by, give me a second. I need a book. This is a point made by writer-philosopher Gary Cox in his book How to Be an Existentialist, where he reframes Sartre. He makes the point that the philosophy and existentialism is often criticized as weaving these elaborate, unrealistic, sort of like these intellectual concepts of authenticity that the layman can't relate to. He puts it like this on page 93. When existentialist philosophers criticize a person for his inauthenticity, as they are very fond of doing, they do not seem to fully appreciate that the person may simply not realize he is inauthentic. The person may genuinely believe, knowing no better, that it's possible for him to be at one with himself. He is unlikely, of course, to present his belief to himself in such intellectual terms. Against this kind of criticism, existentialist philosophers will insist that it only takes a limited intelligence to recognize the existential truth of the human condition. The existential truths of the human condition. They are not mysterious truths buried in obscure works of philosophy. Everyday life is a hard lesson in the elusiveness of satisfaction, the contingency of existence, the imminence of death, and so on. If people do not see these existential truths and the implications of these truths, it's not because they are uninformed, but because they refuse to confront them. These are all Gary Cox's words. Brilliantly put, but all his. It is because they are exercising willful ignorance motivated by cowardice and sustained by bad faith. This is all Sartre's theory, as Cox lays it out. In most cases, it is not because people lack the intelligence that they do not see the existential truths of the human condition, but because they do not want to see them. Now, this is a point that Kierkegaard really tried to hammer home. The arrogant complacency of the bourgeois, or the church-going, the metaphysical unassumptiveness of the layman of his time. I'm paraphrasing hugely. The fact that they do not want to see them, the hard truths about reality, implies, of course, that they have already seen them. Having already seen them, and having been made terribly anxious at the sight of them, they desperately want to avoid seeing them again. The way they avoid seeing them again is by resorting to bad faith. So the way people escape confronting the hard realities of existence is by resorting to bad faith. Bad faith is inauthenticity. It's sort of like stories that we tell ourselves. Now the objection is often made, and it's a reasonable objection. There might be a conscious person who has seen these truths to not care, right? Like, yes, life is suffering. Yes, life has contingencies, but my response to that is not caring. My response to that is essentially bad faith. And it's on the theory of the existentialist to show how that is inauthentic, right? Why is that not an authentic response? Why shouldn't we protect ourselves from the overwhelmingness of the world? It's adaptive, right? It certainly serves an adaptive function. We can go hunting instead of, burying ourselves in existential dread. Well, I'm no expert in Sartre, and he has answered this, I'm sure, but essentially, living in bad faith is not it's not adaptive. You're creating a psychological congruence between what you know and what is real, and persisting in these sort of like misconstrued notions about what the world is like is not going to lead you to a permanent good outcome. It might work in short to medium term, but it will not work in a long-term outcome. This brings to mind the aim of philosophy, which is what Socrates said. Know thyself, right? That's the starting pistol of philosophy. Know yourself. Okay, go. And then Aristotle phrased out the search for the good life as a means in itself. And then since that time, since the search for the good life and knowing yourself began, every philosopher has put forth his philosophy without addressing the question, why is philosophy useful? Like, no paper in philosophy of language or metaphysics or in ethics starts with 30-page ramble about why philosophy is useful or justified. It just takes as a starting position that we should pursue knowledge, we should pursue wisdom, and we just get on with that activity. The criticism of authenticity hits home because it hits at people existentially, and thus they're more likely to use this sort of like objection. Why should we care? Like, why is it authentic to confront reality? Is it inauthentic to, use defensive mechanisms? Yes, I would argue it is, because you're trying to make your life you're not aiming for an authentic life because that's something to aim at in and of itself. You're not trying to become an authentic thing that can like show itself off. The pursuit of authenticity, the pursuit of confronting life's hard facts, is a pursuit to come to terms with what is and not deceive yourself. Like the search for actual truths about existence. That's the aim. And inauthenticity, I would argue, and this is my words, not necessarily Sartre's, inauthenticity is necessarily marked by suffering. It might not be immediate, but it will come in one way or form or another. And an authentic existence is inherently free of suffering. So if you desire to not suffer, the pursuit of the confronting life's harsh truths, and developing an authentic existence, or coming to terms with your authentic existence, is the way to go. So that would be my response to the objection that why is inauthenticity inauthentic, right? Why is bad faith inauthentic? It's not. How would you prove that if the person wasn't if the person making that objection wasn't sold on the whole bettering yourself or confronting reality or making a accurate map of the reality is a worthwhile pursuit. You can't sell someone on the validity of escaping suffering. They have to come to that term themselves. And by escaping suffering, I mean everything from creating an accurate map of the territory they're in to letting go of attachments. Like it's every form of suffering is you having an incorrect assumption about how things should be and hitting reality with that. So yeah, that's my short video on why that objection is, it's philosophically sound, but it makes the assumption that we shouldn't strive for a more accurate picture of the world. And I would maintain that if you want to make that claim, that we shouldn't know ourselves, we shouldn't try to live good lives, and we should just drown ourselves in insincere and inauthentic defense mechanisms and refuse to cope, that would be on you to prove why that was more useful than creating meaningful, engaging, sort of, authentic lives where we come to terms with what is and move forward. So, okay, yeah. Thanks for watching.